This is an image that I took at Angkor Wat just the other day, and it had some potential. It needed to be added to, so I've done a few things to make it look a lot better, but I did like the composition initially. So let's go and have a look at where it started out, and if we click here we can see that was the original image, and you can see I've straightened the building up, put a new sky in, and added a monk, as you do. So let's just talk about how we've done all this. And first thing I did was to cut the building out from the foreground and drop a new sky behind it. Luckily the sky is all white, so it was a very easy fix. So I just chose the magic wand, clicked once or twice, held down the shift key when I clicked, and that adds to the selection, and pretty much just selected like that. I then went up and went to select similar, and that picked up any other whites that were there that needed to be picked up. From there I inverted that selection, which is Command Shift I, and now you can see that marching ants going around the actual building itself. And then from there I went Command J, and that cuts it and puts it out on its own layer. So let me just deselect that and go back to the areas where I've done that. I've cut them out here and here, and I've added a new sky behind it. There's one sky there, another sky there. So it gets a little bit confusing because I've got a couple of things going on with hue saturation adjustment layers that are being clipped down onto the building itself, because I wanted to take out some of the greeny color cast that was in the building. You can see it's kind of a little bit greeny around there. So I've done that, but the sky it's a sky from home, back home near Dunsborough, and I quite like that. I wanted something that was a little bit soft, nothing too detailed, and something that would match in with the building itself. So that was the one I used. I also needed a monk, so I cut this guy out here. You can see I got the marching ants around there, and I did a really rough job. I just lassoed him, went Command C or Control C, which cuts him out, and then pasted him into the image. From there I added a layer mask and went right around the outside properly and just rubbed away all the other bits of the background, just to have a completely good monk without any background showing. So I'll get rid of that one as well, and let's get back to the sun and hand. So I've dropped the sky in. You can see there's a background layer. There's two skies there. The first one is just in there without any blend mode. The second one had a blend mode of multiply because I wanted to darken it down a little bit. If I take that off, you can see that that's how the sky went in. I wanted to add a little bit extra, so I just duplicated that sky and I changed the blend mode to multiply. You can see here I've got a layer mask, and that layer mask has just got a gradient on there. So I wanted to keep it fairly light at the bottom here because it helped blend with these trees, because there was some issues with the masking around these trees, so there was a bit of a white halo. By doing that, it allowed me to keep that fairly light, that sky down there, and it blended quite nicely, and it doesn't look too bad. And that was the way the sun was going down anyway, so it was in the right position. So I've got that cut out. Now you can see with this foreground, I've got one layer there which is a blend mode of multiply, and the next one on top I've duplicated and I've changed the blend mode to normal. Now the multiply one was there because it helps fix up edges, the one underneath, and the normal one on top retains that lightness. And I've just added a layer mask there and just rubbed through what I wanted to keep. Now the other thing is I've got two hue saturation layers here, and they were put on with clipping masks. You can see that little arrow is a clipping mask, and all these will do, as you can see, both those there will change the color. Now to do that, I've used the colorize, check the colorize button, moved my hue to about between 30 and 40, and changed the blend mode of that layer down to hue and drop the opacity back. So that allows me to control the color that's going on in that image. Next thing I did was, let's just go to a different view here. Hit F on the keyboard, allows you to hide all the other stuff and keep it nice and neat. V on the keyboard is your move tool. I always make sure I've got the move tool selected because I do tend to move things around a bit. The next thing is I did a levels adjustment layer, because what I could see there is that it actually needed a little bit of light. It was about there, and just bring the white point up. After that, I've done a curves adjustment layer. This one was to actually darken things around the outside a little bit, darken the sky, and I've just pulled a point down there in the middle. So what I would have done is create a curves adjustment layer like this, clicked on the little hand with the two arrows, up and down arrows on it, and probably gone over and put it somewhere, selected somewhere over the sky where I wanted it to be darkened. Click and drag down, and that darkens it from there. If I want to control the saturation at all, I can then just pull this point down. That will control the saturation a little bit, make it darker but not more saturated. So that's how I did that. And then of course I've used this layer mask and brushed with black and lightened up the areas I wanted to keep light, which is through the building mostly. So let me just delete that one. And this is what I've done there. So you can see I've just darkened that, just a slight vignette. From there I've stamped visible, which is Command Option Shift E, to put a flattened copy of all these layers below it onto the top. And then I've gone in and done a freaky details on that layer. So when I did the freaky details, I went up and did a copy of that layer, Command J, and that's from there allows me to go down and add vivid light, invert that layer, Command I or Control I, and then went to filter, blur, surface blur, and it had a radius of 40 and a threshold of 40. I would click OK normally, but in this case I won't. What happens, it does its thing, comes out looking kind of like that. I'll delete that. Comes out looking like this, and at that point then you want to stamp visible again, because you see it's got a blend mode of vivid light there. If we stamp visible, which is Command Option Shift E, it allows us, it gives us this layer here, which is this is the stamp visible layer on top there. Just turn that one off, and then the blending mode is changed to soft light, and the opacity is brought back to around half of what it normally is, so about 50, 55%, whatever. Anywhere between 40 and 60% is good. It gives you the freaky details, but it doesn't actually make it too strong. So if you want to learn the freaky detail technique more correctly or explain better, just look at some of my other videos, and a lot of those have the technique. And as you zoom in, you look at the building, you see what difference the freaky details makes to the building structure. It's really amazing. Okay, from there I've gone and I've straightened the image up. So I've done a copy on top, sorry, stamp visible again, and I've just pulled that back using the skew command. So what I would do, flatten that off, choose this one here, and then I'd go Command T, right mouse click within the box there, go to skew, and I'll just pull this back, something like that. Okay, I've done that already, so I can delete that layer, and you can see this is the layer here that I've done and straightened. From there I've done levels adjustment layer and just lightened up through that area of the building. But what you'll see if I click on this mask here is I actually created a luminosity mask to create a better so it allowed me to lighten things without blowing any highlights. So simply, if I turn that off, I go to channels, hover over the icon and the RGB there, hold down the command or control key, click once. That creates our luminosity mask. Go back to layers, add a levels adjustment layer, and I will invert that, because what now just dealing with the light areas, I want to deal with the dark areas. Okay, so everything is 50% grey and darker. So I'll invert that layer mask, which is there, and then I can bring this white point up. Now, as you can see, it's adding a lot of light through that building, which is great. It hasn't blown any of the highlights, but it's also lightening up the sky a bit too much. I don't want to lighten the sky. So all I've done then is look on beef brush, painted with the black brush, which is my foreground colour is black, 100% opacity, made the brush a bit bigger, and just started brushing some of this stuff back, like so. I've gone over the building a little bit just so that I don't get any haloing there. And let's just darken that down. So it's similar to what I've done here. So I'll delete that layer to show you that's what I've done. Then I've gone and added my monk. So when you zoom in to him, you can see there I've positioned him so that his feet look like they are actually on the step. Obviously this one would be hidden behind the step because of the view, and he seems to fit quite well. So that's the wrong one, this one. There he is before and after. Now he's a little bit light and a little bit colourful, so what I've gone and done is I've created a levels adjustment layer, and I've clipped it down just to him. You see the clipping layer there, so if I do that for the levels, I go do a levels adjustment layer. In the box you'll see that icon there for clipping, make sure that's ticked, and then whenever I do make an adjustment here, it'll just adjust on him. So I've done a bit of adjustment just to darken him down a little bit, maybe a bit of mid-tone, something like that. Okay, so I'll get rid of that, and I'll just put that back on, which is this one there. I've also done a hue saturation adjustment layer just to drop some of that saturation back. And again, you can see here, this is the saturation adjustment layer here. Again, you can see it's been clipped. There's the little icon there that you click, and I've just dropped the saturation back. And because it's clipped, it's only affecting saturation on him. After that, I've stamped visible. So I've gone Command Option Shift E. It's given me a flattened version. And because I think it's still a little bit cheery, I've decided that I would do the apply image last up. So I go to Image, Apply Image, make sure the channel is changed to red, everything else is fine, and the blending is on Multiply, and then clicked OK. Then I've applied a layer mask and just started rubbing back with black, my foreground colour, back here just to bring the light back. Now when I get close to the edge of the building, you don't want to get the halos there, so I've done some simple masks. Let me just delete this and I'll show you what I've done. This is the one here. I've just applied the image and I've lightened up through there. So if I click on that mask, you can see I've actually gone and made some quick selections around those hard edges and gone over those and lightened and darkened some of the pillars. Yeah, it looks a bit messy, but it actually works quite well in the final result. And I won't have any halos around the edges there, so that's how that was done. So that sort of grunges it all up, makes it look pretty good. So if we get back to the start, hold down the Option or Alt key, click on the eye, you see where we came from and where we ended up. Alright, thanks very much.